This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. We were going to call the show In the Loopy, but unlike Newsy, In the Loop with a Y just doesn't slap. Here's what we got for y'all. Most American voters will be eligible to vote by mail for the upcoming general election, and election offices will be offering tracking services, but how reliable is that technology? Plus, public transit ridership almost ground to a halt during this pandemic. We'll take a look at that decline of public transit and what it says about the economy broadly. But first, here's what you need to know right now.
It burned everything. There's not a house left anywhere up there. This was brutal.
Much of Oregon, California, and Washington are still on fire, as at least 33 people have died from wildfires across the West. The latest count shows roughly 3,000 firefighters from 27 states are helping battle the flames, but weather conditions aren't helping. Wind fueled some fires and blew thick smoke into major cities, worsening the already severe air quality. Today, the president visited California to survey some of the damage and meet with Governor Gavin Newsom. Trump previously blamed the fires on poor forest management, but Newsom says there's another glaring issue that can't be ignored.
The debate is over around climate change. Just come to the state of California. Observe it with your own eyes. It's not an intellectual debate. It's not even debatable.
California has been dealing with record-breaking fires and temperatures this summer. Meanwhile, blazes in Oregon already burned more than 1 million acres and forced tens of thousands of people to evacuate.
I feel safe, but also I also feel very sad that some people, houses had been down, and some people maybe have died from the fires.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania is the latest community seeing protests after police shot and killed a 27-year-old man. Officers were called to a home Sunday afternoon for a domestic disturbance. Body camera footage shows Ricardo Munoz coming out of the home with what police say is a knife. Munoz then chased the officer, who responds by shooting and killing him. Demonstrators took to the street overnight to protest what they called an unjust use of force. Authorities released the video to social media saying it does not explain if the officer's force was justified. That officer is now on administrative leave while the county's district attorney's office is investigating.
Now we feel quite comfortable with the safety of the product, so we want to expand to more vulnerable populations.
The pharmaceutical company Pfizer wants to add 14,000 more people to its vaccine trial. On Sunday, the drug maker's CEO said they could know if their vaccine is effective by the end of October. So what does that mean for when the public could have a vaccine in hand? First, the results from the late-stage trial, which ends in late October, need to be reviewed by the FDA. If the FDA approves it, the company says it's prepared to distribute the vaccine. The US government paid Pfizer $1.95 billion to produce 100 million doses of it. But the vaccine alone wouldn't just flip the switch and bring life back to normal. Dr. Anthony Fauci says the return will be a lot more gradual.
It's going to take months to get enough people vaccinated to have an umbrella of immunity over the community so that you don't have to worry about easy transmission. And that's what I mean. It's not going to be an overnight event where you have a vaccine and then all of a sudden everything is okay.
An unprecedented number of people are eligible to vote by mail for this year's general election, and election offices are offering tracking services to let voters track their ballots like the near-daily shipments you've ordered throughout the pandemic. I can't be the only one. But how reliable is that ballot tracking technology? Newsy's Patrick Terpstra has more.
Thank you very much.
President Trump claims without evidence that if you vote by mail, it may not count.
Make sure you send the ballot in and then go to your polling place and make sure it counts. Make sure it counts.
But election offices can let you know for sure your completed mail-in ballot has been counted.
I want to know where my mail ballot is.
One way is through online ballot tracking. It lets people use their smartphone or computer to monitor the status of their vote, like a package. It can tell you when your ballot has been sent to you, and after you fill it out and mail it back, when it's received and tabulated. Ballot tracking can also alert you about any problems with your mail-in vote, such as a missing signature. It's available in most states, but the features vary depending on location.
It's very reliable. The most complicated part is for a voter to look themselves up and become a subscriber.
Still, we found online ballot tracking occasionally has trouble.
Just wanted to know that my vote was counted.
Julie BURTCH says software in use in Detroit called Ballot Tracks never showed her absentee vote was received during the August primary.
I know dozens of people who are in the same situation that I am, where they are unable to verify that their vote was counted. I'm questioning now whether I want to vote absentee in the next election.
Detroit's Department of Elections told us the Ballot Tracks tool worked fine, but high turnout overwhelmed election workers trying to keep the system updated.
The Detroiters use our ballot tracks in largest numbers than we're ever used to. We're working with an IT company right now to revamp our ballot tracks.
Detroit is adding more people to run ballot tracks this November. The same software is in use in much of the country, more than 200 counties. Ballot Tracks is working with election clerks to make sure officials are equipped to keep the service accurate amid the expected crush of mail-in voters.
Nothing's perfect, especially with technology. This system's pretty well matured by now. We've built it in 2009. So we've run hundreds and hundreds of elections through it.
Interviews with voting officials and experts across the country showed widespread confidence in online ballot tracking.
This is a simple system that provides an excellent customer service and a great tool for voters to feel assured that their ballot was received and is counted.
They offer this advice for mail-in voters. Send in your ballot early with enough time to confirm it's cast, either by using online tracking or a phone call to your elections office.
Take a little bit of time to do those steps and make sure their ballot is counted.
Patrick Terpstra, Newsy, Washington.
Not to be nosy, but one of our nearest neighbors has things going on that we haven't noticed before.
Newsy cuts through.
With so much going on here on our planet, it's not hard to look deep into space and think, I wonder what they got going on over there. Well, in Venus's case, a lot more than we thought. Here's what's trending. Astronomers from the Royal Astronomical Society have detected gas in the clouds of Venus that have led to some pretty exciting developments.
We have detected a rare gas called phosphine in the atmosphere of our neighbor planet, Venus. And the reason for our excitement is that phosphine gas on Earth is made by microorganisms that live in oxygen-free environments. And so there is a chance that we have detected some kind of living organisms in the clouds of Venus.
Okay, that didn't quite sound like aliens, but still pretty cool. The other possibility drawn from this discovery is that there could be some unknown chemistry going on in Venus's clouds. As always, more research is needed, but scientists hope that the findings will make Venus more attractive for future probe missions. We're basically the nosy planet in our solar system. Oracle is trending after the tech company announced it will serve as the trusted technology provider of ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, which sounds more like a partnership than a sale, low-key. This comes after ByteDance rejected Microsoft's bid. Before this announcement, TikTok's US operations were on deadline: sell or be banned from the States. Oracle's attraction to TikTok was a confusing one because they focus on database products and cloud computing services, not social media platforms. Oracle CEO Larry Ellison is a Trump supporter and vice versa. President Trump expressed support for Oracle's bid to buy TikTok back in August. The deal still needs government approval. And Jonathan Majors, one of the main characters from HBO's Lovecraft Country, who also has arms for days, could be joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Deadline reports Majors has been tapped for one of the lead roles in Ant-Man 3, with many speculating that he could portray Kang the Conqueror, a time-traveling dude who just has it out for the Avengers.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your days on this dead Earth.
Major's role hasn't been confirmed and Ant-Man 3 doesn't have a release date yet, but Marvel does have at least 2 movies scheduled for 2022, a year we'll hopefully be able to make it back to the theaters without risking life-threatening illness. Public transit ridership has fallen by 90% since the start of the pandemic, which is pretty rough for transportation departments. But despite whether you personally take public transportation, That decline is also an economic indicator of sorts. National reporter Dan Grossman tells us about the far-reaching effects of a transit slowdown.
Even if you aren't one of the 36 million Americans who relied on public transportation in 2019, make no mistake that this story affects you just as much as if you were.
Without transit, there is no economic recovery.
As executive director of the National Association of City Transportation Officials, or NACTO, Corinne Kistner knows the peril that faces public transportation right now is life or death.
The reality is that transit agencies are in an existential crisis.
Life or death for more than just those tasked with buoying the system.
We need people to get tested. In many places, they have said they will not test anyone who doesn't arrive in a car. Well, there are a lot of people that don't have one.
Once ridership dropped by up to 90% across the country, public transportation departments saw their revenues plummet. Beth Osborne with Transportation for America, a public advocacy group, says aside from fares, most transit money comes from sales tax, which also took a hit when the economy shut down.
It really does have tentacles that impact so much of our economy, of our health, of recovery and getting through this.
In San Francisco, the revenue drop has led to Bay Area Rapid Transit dropping more than 50% of its service. The story is similar for most major city transit systems where essential workers comprise 36% of the rider base.
So we're really limping along and hoping that Congress will approve more funding for us.
The $25 billion in CARES Act funding alleviated some woes early on, but officials estimate $32 billion more is needed to make it through the end of the year, and right now no package is in place.
We're doing what we can to try to get essential workers to and from where they need to go, but beyond that, it's not much of a service compared to what we used to provide.
If departments don't find an answer, NACTO says 30,000 jobs could be lost because of stalled capital improvement projects, only exacerbating a larger problem our country has been trying to fix for months now.
There's simply no other mode that's as efficient as transit, and transit is what makes dense urban environments, the economic, the cultural, the social engines of our cities possible.
In San Francisco, I'm Dan Grossman reporting.
I'm going to take a moment to figure out how to change my Roku screensaver picture to something less toothy. We'll see you when you're back. A historic number of women were elected to Congress after the 2018 midterms. You might remember this image of all the House Democratic women posing in front of the Capitol in 2019 after they were sworn in. Not pictured, the declining number of Republican women. So the GOP invested in recruiting more women, and Newsy's Shira Tarlow reports that that investment is starting to pay off.
More Republican women than ever are running for the House in 2020.
The reason why I'm running is because I'm tired of chaos and dysfunction. I got tired of talking about it and wanted to do something about it.
I have been around trailblazing women, and I think it's been disappointing to not see that reflected in the U.S. House of Representatives from a Republican women's perspective.
This year, over 200 Republican women have pursued House seats, eclipsing the previous record of 135 set in 2010. The milestone comes after the 2018 midterms powered a historic number of women to Congress. Few, however, were Republican. That same year, the number of GOP women in the House actually dropped from 23 to just 13. The dip led Republicans to invest more resources into recruiting women.
We need to do better at making sure that we're helping and supporting Republican women.
Women like Collins, a first-time candidate who previously ran an education technology company.
The fact that there's only 13 Republican women means that our voices, our perspectives, and our experiences are not able to help shape policy and also really help move the needle down the line to really make impact.
And Hinson, who after serving 2 terms in the Iowa State House, set her sights on Capitol Hill.
If you look at the number of Republican women who have stepped up to run this year, that tells the other side of the story. That is, Republican women are ready to engage.
For Republicans, electing more women is about more than control of the House. It's about countering the narrative that women are turning on the GOP under President Trump, a major focus of the 2020 Republican convention.
We must make sure that women are heard. A woman in a leadership role can still seem novel,
Not so for President Trump.
But the vast underrepresentation of women in Congress is not unique to any one party. In fact, women of all political stripes remain underrepresented in elected offices across the country. Both Hinson and Collins are locked in competitive races against first-term Democrats. Hinson's Iowa district is considered a toss-up, and Collins in Texas likely Democratic by the Cook Political Report.
It's about time that our voices and perspective are brought to the table and that Congress looks like a better representation of the people of this country.
Women are tired of waiting for someone else to step up. And I think that that's what we're seeing more of with Republican women.
Many colleges and universities have struggled to deal with coronavirus cases. Colleges in all 50 states have reported coronavirus clusters at their campuses. Honestly, those large auditoriums hosting hundreds of students for some introductory seminar sounds like a nightmare scenario during this pandemic. But smaller colleges have some advantages at implementing protocols that could keep students, faculty, and staff safe. Newsy's Amy Morona explains.
Student behavior will make or break colleges this semester.
I do think that it is possible for some smaller colleges, particularly those that have significant resources, to be able to move through this semester and keep their number of cases relatively low.
Many smaller institutions may have advantages to help slow the spread of COVID-19, like more room to host socially distanced classes outside, the ability to frequently test a wider swath of the population, and an intrinsic way to contact trace.
I know every single person I interact with, and I know every single person that my friends interact with. So there's a level of trust that comes from living in a small community.
It's also easier to quickly quarantine students on campus, like Pennsylvania's Gettysburg College did earlier this month. But now, administrators are de-densifying the number of people remaining at the school and shifting many classes online for its roughly 2,600 students after it saw an uptick in cases.
This reflects our commitment to a residential model, but also a recognition that the path we were on simply wasn't sustainable.
Plus, any preventative steps take extra cash, and some may not have as much on hand as others. And ultimately, that small campus size could also be the Achilles heel of some colleges.
Once you get 100 cases or something, that's not tenable when that's 5-10% of your total campus population. So these larger schools, they can have a small outbreak and they can control it, but it takes less to shut down a small college.
Amy Morona, Newsy, Washington.
One way to keep from being at risk is to get your boss to isolate you. Feel free to keep me company by reaching out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. We'd much rather engage with you than think about how many days until I have colleagues again. It's not always easy finding overlap in partisan politics, obviously, but a little-known internet law which shields tech companies from being held liable for the content their users post has Democrats and Republicans on the same side. Both parties want to change the law, but as Newsy's Tyler Atkinson explains, they can't agree on a fix.
There's one thing both President Donald Trump and his opponent Joe Biden agree on in this 2020 election. Both want to revoke Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. It may be unfamiliar to most Americans, but Section 230 means a lot to internet and tech companies. It protects them from being sued for moderating user posts that may contain objectionable content. The nearly 25-year-old law was passed when these companies were just launching into the then unknown internet universe. But some now think it's time to add some accountability.
Section 230 is not really a regulation of the commercial internet. It's a protection against regulation in the form of lawsuits. And it specifically protects the ability of internet platforms and websites to regulate content largely as they see fit.
Newsy spoke to Paul Barrett, who recently published a report on the history, critiques, and possible fixes that could be made to Section 230. He says much of the ire toward 230 is driven by how the old law grants social media giants a lot of leeway to police or not police things like hate speech. Often, social media giants aren't held accountable when user posts cause real-world harm, or when they profit off misinformation.
Congress, since the 1990s, has taken a laissez-faire approach, has not set up anything comparable in terms of a regulatory structure for internet companies. And one way to view what's going on now vis-a-vis Section 230 is that there is a a revisiting of that original decision to take a hands-off approach.
How that law is changed could depend on who is elected in November. Barrett says even though Trump and Biden want to change the law, that change will require a bipartisan regulatory effort. In a country with deep political divisions, that's going to be tough.
Democrats generally are approaching this out of a concern that there ought to be more expression of the sort that they favor and less of the harmful content that they feel is too dominant, hate speech and so forth. The Republicans seem to be primarily concerned about the attempt, in their view, by platforms to silence as they see it. I don't think there's actually any empirical support for this.
Newsy reached out to both presidential candidates to ask why they wanted to revoke the law. Biden's campaign didn't respond, but in May, a campaign spokesperson told The Verge that a revised law should hold social media companies accountable for promoting falsehoods. Trump campaign spokesperson Samantha Zager told Newsy, "It's clear that across social media platforms, the arbitrary rules these companies create do not apply equally to every account and instead are used to silence any views in opposition to those held by the liberal coastal elites in Silicon Valley." Barrett is among those researchers who think that 230 should be left intact, however.
It's almost impossible to conceive of how, with the current ideological split and partisan paralysis that exists in Washington, how any of this very complex legislating would be able to move forward.
They say the law still holds value for smaller social media companies, which may not have the legal budgets to battle frivolous content moderation lawsuits. Barrett also says the ideal 230 amendment would give social media companies the option to opt in to a quid pro quo deal.
In order to continue enjoying the benefits of Section 230, platforms would have to agree to a variety of steps to improve their handling of harmful content and increase transparency as a way of improving accountability.
Tyler Adkisson, Newsy, Chicago.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back with more In the Loop tomorrow, same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.